Hello guys, welcome back to our Anime Explainer. Today is explanation of upcoming episode Throne of Seal based on novel. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. So let's start. In normal times, the Aria of the Goddess of Light could release a blade of light of 2 meters length, but this was without the help of the pure light element inserted by Long Houchen. After this divine sword got sealed, many people had tried to undo its seal without success. Even a powerhouse of the 9th step had failed and left in low spirits, but why was that? This was because the requirement for the release of the seal was not a massive amount of light elemental spiritual energy, but an incomparably pure spiritual energy of the light element. With the backing from the overflowing sword intent, Long Houchen was like a tiger among a flock of sheep. Once again flapping the wings on his back, he made his way into the enemy lines and immediately burst out like a tyrannical golden spiral in the midst of the Jacques demons. Retribution Night skill of the 7th step, Storm of Blades. Although Long Houchen wasn't yet at the 7th step of cultivation, his capacity as a God's chosen one still permitted him to use reasonably powerful skills of the 7th step, because his spiritual energy was backed by Yating with her full strength. Right now, if one paid careful attention, they would see that at the back of the rapidly whirling Long Houchen, Yating was keeping herself close to him, absorbing great amounts of the spiritual energy in the air before pouring it inside Long Houchen's body. Storm of Swords was a powerful ability, which affected a large area. It could be called an upgraded version of the warrior's tornado strike. With a stronger spiritual energy and a stronger weapon, it would gain in power as well. When using this ability, Long Houchen turned everything in an area of 30 meters into an ocean of gold, instantly reducing 24 Jacques demons to broken pieces, entangled in the golden light. With a resonant bellow, Hao Yue's massive figure was dashing forward. Sweeping his massive tail, he brazenly sent several Jacques demons flying to the sky. Then, his fourth head acted in the same way as the great magic cannon from a fort, continuously launching one spell after another, all bursting in succession. Han Yu, Sima Xian, and Wang Yuan jumped from Hao Yue's back. Sima Xian was in the front, blocking the enemies in front of Hao Yue to let him launch a smooth magic assault. Han Yu and Wang Yuan were on his left and right side. Lin Xin didn't use any powerful offensive spell, and acted as a defender, creating one fire shield after another with a lightning speed, helping everyone to resist the attacks from the enemies. This was their first crowd battle ever since entering the demon territory this time, and seeing Long Houchen's intense bursts of power, everyone was filled with confidence. This was also the first time they burst out with their whole power. Even without the use of the spiritual stove of purple thunder, Sima Xian's terrible golden ball shattered everything into pieces, with even more power than Long Houchen's storm of blades. And furthermore, don't forget that he wasn't using any abilities. The energetic ball of light, and his own brutal strength were all he relied on. In Wang Yuan's hand, the divine soul shield swirled all around. There was no need to embed any of the spatial crystals, because none of the Jacques demons could resist the blows from her divine soul shield. On the other side, Han Yu also showed an intrepid performance. Everything in the range of his wild scarlet blood sword at the legendary tier collapsed, immersed in blood-colored light. Only a short time right after they attacked the enemy ranks, more than 100 Jacques demons died. In other words, their mission was successfully cleared. Long Houchen's group made an extremely sudden appearance, and it was only now that the Jacques demons retaliated. The 2 Jacques chiefs leading them shouted. Behind them, the dozen Jacques officers of the 6th step led the army back to regroup and attacked Long Houchen's group, while these 2 Jacques chiefs kept pursuing the King Grade Demon Hunt Squad. Undoubtedly, these 2 Jacques chiefs were very quick to react, and pretty good in adjusting to battlefield conditions, but they were also underestimating Long Houchen's group. Actually, they were not the only ones to underestimate the 64th Commander Grade Demon Hunt Squad. Even Long Houchen's group was underestimating themselves. In their minds, powerhouses of the 4th step would at least withstand one of their attacks, but after the real start of the battle, they discovered that these Jacques demons of the 4th step were like paper in front of them. Their 1 year of seclusion brought a lot of changes to the 64th Commander Grade Demon Hunt Squad. With the great strengthening of their external spiritual energy, and the steady advance of their internal spiritual energy, as well as their steady attitude and the spiritual stoves acquired by everyone, they were now comparable to a new Demon Hunt Squad of the King Grade. Little Flame belched out an exploding fireball of 1 meter diameter. He aimed at the distance with a loud bang, and bathed 1 more dozen Jacques demons in an ocean of fire. Without pause, Little Green kept puffing out one wind edge after another. But the difference from Little Fire was that although Little Green's launched spells weren't really that powerful, They had the size of eyes, and every wind edge would find a Jack demon and aim at their vitals. Little Light was releasing golden light, connecting himself with Long Houchen to constantly pour his light element energy into Long Houchen's body through Brilliant World. Little Blue raised his head with some pride, the horn on his head glinting in faint white light, as he spouted large numbers of ice cones at the surroundings. This was not only effective in killing and wounding the enemies, but also reduced their speed. It could be said that at his current state, Hao Yue could be considered the same as 4 mags, all of them at the 6th step. Under these circumstances, while awaiting the dozen Jack demons of officer rank, the casualties among the ordinary Jack demons already surpassed 200 and were increasing fast. Soaring in the sky, Long Houchen lightly flapped with the spiritual wings on his right side, turned in the air, and flashed through this Jack officer. Waving the 2 heavy swords in his hands, he launched Azura strikes from both swords. After such a long time of cultivation, he could finally launch the powerful ability Azura Strike with only one hand. While launching this blow, a severe white glow spread out from the midst of his body, enveloping more than a dozen Jack officers in it. However, this ability wasn't launched by Long Houchen, but came from Yating, who had been chanting for a really long time. Light spell of the 7th step, Holy Intimidation. For the light fairy Yating, launching a spell 1 rank above was nothing much, only required a little more time. If this spell was directed at ordinary enemies, it would only temporarily put them in a state of shock while causing light elemental damage, preventing them from moving for 2 seconds and no more. However, when Holy Intimidation was aimed at enemies of the darkness element, its might would increase severalfold, especially against enemies of inferior strength, producing extreme effects. One could clearly see that all the Jack officers were ignited with a white fire, and their group that was about to encircle Long Houchen and Cai shrieked. Their bodies twitched violently, as they sunk in a dizzy state due to the extreme effects of intimidation. If one looked down from a certain height, he would see that right after the eruption of the white glint, the golden and a black figure passed through the crowd like shadows, and next, one corpse after another fell to the ground. All the 30 Jack officers of the 6th step were wiped out. The golden and the black figure met, and Long Houchen and Cai stared at each other, perfectly mirroring the shock on their counterpart's face. Although they had complete confidence in their ability of getting rid of those Jack officers, they didn't actually expect it to go that smoothly. Even without the magic assistance from Yating, they wouldn't have faced much difficulty. But with her spell, killing these Jack officers became as simple as to kill ordinary Jack demons. For any army who lost a quarter of their troops while the enemy didn't suffer any losses, preserving the will to fight wasn't easy. Against the tyrannical offensive from the 64th Commander Grade Demon Hunt Squad, the army of Jack demons was finally routed and started escaping in all directions. At this time, the 2 Jack chiefs of the 8th step were in a state of shock, while getting caught in an inescapable predicament. Of course, Long Houchen's group wouldn't go chase after these ordinary Jack demons. From the beginning, they only went after the powerhouses from the Jack clan to rescue their fellow mates. However, against their expectations, they defeated the army of Jack demons, to the point that those escapees didn't even pay heed to their chiefs, solely being preoccupied with their escape. Situations like this would actually almost never occur for soldiers of the Temple Alliance. On the other side, the King Grade Demon Hunt Squad stopped their escape, and faced the attacks from these powerful Jack demons. In this team, the most powerful ones were the Mithril Foundation, Armored Knight and the Summoner. Thanks to the Summoner, who spent great expenses of spiritual energy to bring forth all those summons, they withstood the attacks from these Jack demon powerhouses, and made a pincer attack in cohesion with Long Houchen's group. The 2 Jack chiefs of the 8th step let out snarls after snarls without pause, gathering the routed army, while one of them led 6 Jack officers to face Long Houchen's group, firm formation. Long Houchen shouted loudly, about to face the powerhouses of the 8th step. This was his second time facing a powerhouse of the 8th step, so they obviously didn't keep a scattered formation like before. Yating floated in the sky right over Little Light's head, chanting an incantation along with him, and poured powerful spiritual energy of the light element into Long Houchen. Meanwhile, the whole 64th Commander Grade Demon Hunt Squad acted. Their eyes only reflected a single target, the Jack chiefs. As for those officers at the 6th step, what were they in comparison? Right at this time, in the little hills nearby, 3 different beasts appeared. 2 were at the 5th rank and 1 at the 7th rank, and these 3 magical beasts arrived in a mad rush at the same time. Closing into this side of the battlefield, Chen Yinga was seated on the back of one of the magical beasts of the 5th rank. Before, It was for the sake of creating a diversion that Long Houchen urged her to use the creature summoning gate. In case they managed the rescue, Chen Yinger's summons would create a diversion for Long Houchen and the others to escape, relying on McDull, who transformed into a demon holder to restrict them from flying away. However, no one expected the battle to turn out this way. The army of 1,000 Jacques demons crumbled under their attacks, causing rapid changes on the battlefield. Since Chen Yinger clearly saw the situation of the battlefield, she naturally didn't fall behind and brought her summoned beasts to regroup with the others, joining the battle. The 8th step was still the 8th step, and although the Jacques chief was affected by the mucus from the demon holder, his response remained very quick. Galloping on his 4 hoofs, he directly rushed towards Long Houchen's group of 6. While he advanced, a black halo spread under his feet. One black halo after another spread, and his scales gained a pitch-black layer of gloom. Tiny black flames started to burn on his body, igniting that annoying mucus, while increasing the vigor of the Jacques chief. In his hand he carried a pitch-black spear. Once his distance from Long Houchen's group was close to 50 meters, the Jacques chief let out a snarl towards the sky. A faint black shade spread from his back, widening just like a black hole that engulfed everything. Turning halfway, he lunged his right arm with the spear backwards, before throwing it at Long Houchen's group fiercely. Strangely, this black spear clearly flew towards them, yet that Jacques chief still kept the main body of the spear in his hand. Be careful, that's tyrannical extermination. From afar, the knight from the King Grade Demon Hunt Squad shouted loudly, but he didn't have the time to look after someone else, and was unable to provide aid to Long Houchen's side. To avoid getting injured, the 2 Jacques chiefs actually didn't go all out before, but the situation changed when their subordinates got crushed that easily. These 2 powerhouses of the 8th step were both set on fire by that sight. Although their position among demons was not as majestic as that of demon gods, as the 1st and the 2nd chief of the Jacques clan, they almost ruled the whole Jacques province. Although the Jacques province was the smallest province in the demon territory, it was still one of the 24 provinces. To be reduced to such a sorry state by a dozen humans, and with the great amount of casualties among their subordinates, it would be rather strange to see these chiefs stay calm. The instant that pitch-black spear was thrown, the sky suddenly darkened, and even the sandstorm was dispersed. It felt as if it had the might of a Jura strike, while it affected an even larger area. The terrifyingly intense pressure gave everyone the chill, and created the threatening feeling that this tyrannical extermination was directed right at themselves. This technique, launched by a powerhouse of the 8th step, was as terrifying as expected. What followed was the launch of the twisted black spear, and its indistinct flight trajectory. However, right at this moment, Long Houchen proudly rushed forward, with a white light emerging from his back. It was the Saint Spiritual Stove's attraction ability, aimed accurately at the Jacques chief of the 8th step. When facing a powerful enemy, be the first to face him. This was the courageous pledge of a guardian knight, no matter how strong the enemy was. The guardian knight of the team needed to always be the first to rush in. Long Houchen handed the rippling light from his left hand to Yating, and took the aria of the goddess of light with both of his hands, abruptly stopping his dash in midair. Immediately, his whole body entered a bizarre state, raising his hand at a deceivingly low speed. This was a 1-against-1 fight, where Long Houchen wanted to rely on his own strength to face the powerful attack of the Jacques demon at the 8th step. Right now, the changes on him reflected clearly on aria of the goddess of light. The original strong radiance of his sword vanished, and it again turned dark gold. Along with that mysterious raising motion, Long Houchen gave the feeling of treating this divine sword the same way as a new bride in a veil. If a true expert of the sword had been present, he would definitely recognized that scene as shocking in a glance. What Long Houchen showed wasn't as simple as fusing with his sword, but rather like fusing with nature. Accumulating sword intent, without letting any scatter, he grasped the real essence of the use of a sword. Perhaps, he wasn't able to show some magnificent swordplay, but ever since getting the aria of the goddess of light, his understanding regarding swords had already vastly increased. Darkness and dark gold clashed with each other, and Long Houchen's whole body was shaken, before being sent flying several meters back. He was stopped by being knocked against Hao Yue's massive body. However, that shadow spear was forcibly repelled to the sky. Right, this wasn't a strike aiming to meet force with force, but aiming to send the enemy flying high. Long Houchen was after all only at the 6th step, and although his internal spiritual energy was already not far from 10,000 units, he was still after all only a radiant knight of the 6th step. Even with the most amazing legendary equipment, beating a powerhouse of the 8th step with pure force was impossible. However, He managed to repel the enemy using an ability such as tyrannical extermination with his own strength. Looking at it, this attack was very simple. Long Houchen had simply changed the trajectory of the enemy's attack and cut off the connection between his intentions and technique. But was it really so easy to pull that off? His move was exercised with the perfect coordination between his strength and his sword intent. This simple-looking attack was however the result from Long Houchen's fusion of his sword intent with the battle skills from the ancient times. That Jack chief was also shocked when seeing his own attack being repelled by Long Houchen in such a way. He absolutely didn't expect this knight, with fluctuations of spiritual energy far from equaling the other knight, to actually push him back. And this was while he was using such an astute technique as tyrannical extermination. His two lower wings flapped, while the upper one stayed motionless. Long Houchen's body was suddenly raised several meters up into the sky, fortunately avoiding the breath of darkness released by the Jack chief below. Meanwhile, Long Houchen's whole body shone once again in that eerie golden light, forming one entity with his sword. When the shadow spear of that Jack chief was rushing at him from all directions, the aria of the goddess of light in his hand kept resisting attack after attack, as if he was a boat in the midst of violent waves. The Jack chief, having an extremely profound perception, felt that this human should have died the moment his attack landed on him. However, every time he felt that he was about to kill the enemy's heavy sword would briefly touch the spear at a crucial location, and by borrowing force from his spiritual wings, he'd escape the danger by a hair's breadth. Currently, Long Houchen was just like a shadow. Resisting against the shadow spear, he still didn't fight hard against that Jack chief, completely relying on technique and agility. This left the powerhouse of the 8th step unable to launch his irresistible offensive power at him. In a flash of golden light, a black glow spread, smoothly wrapping Long Houchen's body in it. Right at this moment, Hao Yue's immense figure appeared behind him. Not only that, but with a limpid dragon chant and a golden glint of light, that figure clashed against the aria of the goddess of light. It was Hao Yue that appeared suddenly under him, and his figure, which hovered at 10 meters height, kept rushing forward, carrying a threatening aura. Meanwhile, both him and Long Houchen had their whole body surrounded by purple light, especially their eyes. That bewitching purple color caused even the Jacques chef of the 8th step to shake at its sight. While Long Houchen's body was shaking severely, the strong purple glow filled him, and the mysterious power from an ancient beast erupted from his body. The Jacques chief felt his demeanor being shaken. He found himself unable to keep attacking even with his cultivation at the 8th step, and even drew a few steps back, filled with shock. Right then, the 6 Jacques officers that were charging along with him felt their whole bodies going stiff. A black figure appeared at their backs, and one black line after another pierced them, conveniently taking their lives. This was the act of Kia, who arrived just at the right time. Some rapid changes appeared on Long Houchen's body, his whole glorious holy armor turned purple. Not only that, but earth-shattering variations occurred with his armor at the same time. The originally very concise plate armor gained gorgeous features. The shoulder plates expanded like dragon wings, while the back of the plate armor gained some sort of scales. Layers upon layers of thorns continuously emerged from his armor, forming elegant designs, close to the advanced fairy style, or the relics of some antique tribes from the past. The most distinct feature appeared on Long Houchen's chest. 9 purple lines extended from there, enveloping his shoulders, chest and a large area of his front armor. One could faintly see that at the end of the 9 purple lines were 9 purple balls of light, appearing the same as 9 faces, radiating a tyrannical and bewitching aura. On Long Houchen's forehead, the purple golden glint became incomparably bright, and his black hair turned purple. His originally handsome face lost its pure and holy look to gain charisma. Even the divine sword aria of the goddess of light was shining in his hand, immersed in a deep purple color. This was the fusion between Long Houchen and Hao Yue, but compared to the last time, earth-shattering changes appeared. If the last time, their fusion could be called a semi-finished product, it could be said to have become complete this time thanks to the increase of Long Houchen's strength. The aura spreading from Long Houchen's body was a lot stronger than in the past. His armor turned purple, but the spiritual energy emanating from his body was still golden. The combination turned the spiritual energy exuded by him a magnificent purple gold. The change wasn't only on his body, but also on the aria of the goddess of light in his hand. It appeared that Yating entered the divine sword. Soul ignition. This ability belonged to both Long Houchen and Yating and was revived with Long Houchen's awakening as a god's chosen. Yating's soul ignition was like supportive equipment, while Long Houchen's soul ignition affected his own body. At this moment, right when Yating fused with the aria of the goddess of light, the terrible might of this divine sword emerged, contrary to the bright vengeance that was unable to bear Yating's soul ignition. An overwhelming terrible sword intent burst out from Long Houchen's body, and immediately, a gaudy purple-golden color surrounded Long Houchen. Right at this moment, Long Houchen entered his most powerful battle state, making use of a double soul ignition after his fusion with Haoyue. To say nothing of the enemy, even his comrades felt terror at this moment, because even they were unable to sense the level Long Houchen's strength now reached. Having gained a purple-golden color, his four wings abruptly flapped, and like that, Long Houchen rushed at the Jacques chief like a purple meteor. In his series of probing attacks, he found out that this Jacques chief still had a gap in cultivation compared to that young moon demon. After entering his most powerful state, it really became possible for him to kill this enemy with the help from his comrades. When the divine sword regained a soul, its might reached the epic tier, even surpassing the legendary tier. As a piece of epic tier equipment, it could undoubtedly change the outcome of a war. If Long Houchen wasn't in a fused state with Haoyue, even while letting Yating fuse with the aria of the goddess of light, he wouldn't be able to wield its power. Go to hell. Long Houchen gave a shout and stepped forward, launching an azure thrust. With a drizzling purple-golden color, some bizarre warped gloss appeared in the air, and the strong purple-golden light seemed to engulf the whole surroundings in an instant. Bang. The spear broke and the enemy was sent flying. Although the Jacques chief spared no effort to resist, the aria of the goddess of light was just too terrifying after reaching the epic tier. The terrifying destructive power, and the sword intent that seemed to pierce through the heavens destroyed his weapon almost instantly, and struck his body directly. At the crucial moment of danger, the Jacques chief still had time to bend his head, avoiding a wound to his head, but half of his body was cut with this blow. Including the shoulder, left arm and a large part of the ribcage, his left side was sent flying upwards, while the two hoofs on his right side burst from the explosion of purple-golden light. A massive golden ball also covered the sky right at this time, inflicting a perfect cut to the falling body of the Jacques chief. The three destructive abilities crush, smash and absorption burst out at that time. Pitifully, the strong and brutal Jacques chief was ripped to pieces like that, not even leaving a corpse. However, after this strike, Long Houchen was unable to maintain this state. With a flash, Haoyue's massive body separated from his. Being terribly pale, Long Houchen gasped for air. In his most powerful state, Long Houchen was actually at the threshold of the 8th step. Nonetheless, he could only preserve this state for a very short time. Afterwards, he was extremely weakened, especially after the use from soul ignition. He needed at least 3 or 4 days of rest to recover entirely, despite the improvement of his cultivation level and his understanding of soul ignition compared to the last time. Yating also separated from the aria of the goddess of light. The purple-golden color on the divine sword had already disappeared. Yating looked really out of energy, and directly disappeared into Long Houchen's chest. At this moment, the members from the 64th Commander Grade Demon Hunt Squad stopped moving, gathering at a very fast speed. Then, a dazzling pure golden-colored barrier enveloped everyone, including the curled-up Haoyue. In this barrier of 5 meters in diameter, everyone was affected by this pure golden radiance. The ability, Blessing of Light, from Han Yu's spiritual stove of light blessings was launched. Everyone affected by the heavy and multi-elemental energy recovered from their consumption at a fast pace. And that carefree and revitalizing feeling relaxed everyone's breathing greatly. The spiritual stove of light blessings had great utility. Bathed in that pure golden light, except for the weakened Long Houchen, everyone returned to their peak state in a very short time, even recovering from their physical exhaustion. On the other side, although still resisting, the King Grade Demon Hunt Squad was still in a very difficult situation, and this became all the more true after the Jacques chief was killed by Long Houchen. The Jacques demons became frantic, and launched attacks without any restraint. After seeing his comrade get killed, even the second Jacques chief of the 8th step wasn't filled with fury, but with fear. That was a fact. From the time the Jacques chief attacked to his death, the whole fight had only lasted several seconds. The counterpart killed was a powerhouse at the 8th step, so they could naturally kill a second one. These humans who came later were visibly even more powerful than the ones they chased. After recovering his spiritual energy, Haoyue rushed out with Lin Xin. Haoyue wasn't in the same kind of weak state as Long Houchen, and furthermore, with his evolution, his recovery was greatly strengthened. At least until now, Long Houchen had yet to see Haoyue's limits. During their fusion, he felt his own body's limits, and thus couldn't maintain the fused state with Hao Yue. The reason why Hao Yue and Lin Xin rushed out was naturally to reap magical crystals. Lin Xin's speed of reaction was very fast, but compared to Hao Yue, he was still lacking. Hao Yue's movements were very simple. Rushing ahead, he'd tread on the Jacques demon corpses to crush them, before engulfing the demon crystals in his mouth. Although Lin Xin simply recovered the whole corpses, it was still at an inferior speed. Nonetheless, Hao Yue was still generous and left Lin Xin the magical crystal of the Jacques chief of the 8th step. These things would be very useful to the team, no matter whether used directly, or exchanged for contribution points. These were the greatest items they gained ever since getting into demon territory. The powerful show of strength of the 64th Commander Grade Demon Hunt Squad left these scattering Jacques demons even more in fear, and the several hundred corpses on the ground were very rapidly looted with the joint efforts of Lin Xin and Hao Yue. On the other side of the battlefield, the recovered Sima Xian, Wang Yuan, Han Yu and Caia joined the ongoing battle, providing support for the King Grade Demon Hunt Squad. Although they were unable to kill the second Jacques chief, the demons were already out of fighting spirit and quickly retreated in defeat. The battle was finally over, and the King Grade Demon Hunt Squad's consumption was far greater than that of Long Haochen's team. They didn't even have the strength left to thank Long Haochen's group, and one after another fell to the ground, unable to move even one step further. Long Haochen was sitting cross-legged on the ground, summing up the process of the previous battle. Deep inside, he felt that they had really gained in strength. When facing an enemy at the 8th step in the past, they were left without choice, but to use the conjoined spiritual boosting pill. But this time, they killed the opponent grandiosely, and did that even more easily than that time against the Zombie King. Perhaps even without my most powerful state, we could have killed that one with our own strength. And I really didn't expect the aria of the Goddess of Light to become such a terrifying divine sword after fusing with Yating. Although Long Haochen only got to sense the power of a piece of equipment at the epic tier for a split moment, it still left a very deep impression in him. Even a powerhouse of the 8th step was unable to resist against its power. If not for the strengthening from the aria of the Goddess of Light, killing the enemy in one blow like that wouldn't have been possible, not even in his most powerful state. At the same time, he sensed that when the aria of the Goddess of Light would become a weapon of such level, it would be powerful enough by itself, without adding any ability. Such an overwhelming sword intent would be so that even if one resists it using their physical resistance, he would still get wounded by the sword intent. The 8th step, just when would he become a true powerhouse of the 8th step too? Long Haochen quietly took out the internal spiritual energy measuring gem from his eternal melody, and poured his spiritual energy inside. Seeing the number which came out gave him a nice surprise. 9,782. Wow, it's already above 9,780. So it's no wonder that my fusion with Hao Yue, combined with the use of spiritual ignition, already broke through the 8th step. So my strength had already gotten that close to the 7th step. It was already a long time that Long Haochen didn't check the value of his own internal spiritual energy. From this, he immediately rejoiced greatly. His cultivation rate as a God's chosen one was one of the benefits that he felt were bountiful. Is it his aura? Feng Xiu murmured, talking to himself, and a severe look flashed past his eyes. Huang Shuo. This subordinate listens. From outside, this response could be heard echoing. The demon god Emperor Feng Xiu coldly instructed, "Give my order to dispatch 10 groups of demon hunters removers from the central province, to be gathered mainly in the Jacques province. There, any magical beast with 3 or more heads found are to be killed, and their corpse brought back to me. Yes, your highness. Do you have any other instruction?" After pondering for a short time, Feng Xiu replied, "Please tell the star demon god to meet me." Yes. Shortly later, quiet footsteps resounded, and an orange figure approached with quick steps, getting closer to Feng Xiu's before stopping exemplarily at 10 meters from him, bowing slightly. "Boss." His voice was very soft, touching, and let out a special charm at when hearing it, as well as an unreal feel. This man was entirely clad in orange, and his build looked close to the demon god Emperor Feng Xiu. However, he was more slim, and his handsome face made him look closer to the moon demon god Agars. Only, he had a somewhat look, which gave a feeling of extreme delicateness. His orange-colored eyes seemed to carry a layer of hazy mist, and his supple-looking orange hair was draped out to his back, just like an orange waterfall spreading out until reaching the level of his knee. The most peculiar was that on his forehead appeared a symbol of orange hexagon. If Lin Xin were to see his hair, he would absolutely be jumping with envy. "Vasago, has your body already recovered?" Feng Xiu asked. He visibly entertained a very good friendship with this orange man. If someone were to underestimate this orange man on the basis of his external appearance, he would definitely be out of luck. That's because, despite having a weak, beautiful and rather pitiful look, this was the one praised as demon prophet, their great prophet, star demon god Vasago, whose existence ranked third amongst all the demon gods. From the human point of view, the star demon god Vasago was viewed as the top demon mage, being a rare kind of demon god purely focused on magic among all the 72, and there was no room for doubting his power. In some sense, his position amongst demons made him even more important than the moon demon god Agars. His great prophecy technique would make even the demon god emperor cautious towards him. But the star demon god Vasago would appear very rarely in the battlefield. He was mainly acting as the brain of the demons, or perhaps the brain of the demon god emperor. Among all demons, few people could call the demon god emperor brother, and the only ones the demon god emperor Feng Xiu acknowledged as little brothers were Agars and Vasaga. Bro Feng looks to have recovered to 80% of his strength. The voice of the star demon god Vasago was still as gentle and pleasant to listen to. The face of the demon god emperor looked stagnant. You should have sensed that right before right. Your perception isn't far from mine, but should be even more detailed. Was that really him? The star demon god's expression seemed to become very pale, but he nodded without any hesitation. Feng Xiu's two eyes shrank, and it appeared as if a bolt of purple lightning flashed in his eyes. He actually came. But shouldn't he be unable to leave from there due to the regulations placed on that space? The star demon god let out a light sigh, shaking his head, with the orange hair on his back moving back and forth like waves. I don't understand clearly how this could happen either, but I'm sure that in his current state, he's still far from comparable to back then. Otherwise, I'm afraid he would have come to find us long ago. Also, I am sure that he knows that we are now in this world. Boss, destroying him is our absolute priority. Right then, the demon god emperor actually became hesitant, just because of hearing the words from the star demon god. Unconsciously clenching his both fists, he murmured aloud, I cannot possibly doubt the prophecies you are making at the cost of your own lifespan, but it's just that he seems to be able to block us from locating him accurately. So we can only accidentally spot him sometimes. This way, how could we look for him? The star demon god replied with an indifferent look. A sun-like meteor has descended in the human world, carrying a faint hint of purple. This sunshine should be related to the god of light, dispersing gradually the darkness. At dawn, its presence glints in the northwest, ruling over with the brightness of that purple hint. Then, whether the 72 cages can resist the light from the sun, and destroy these purple hints in its early stages, or whether the cages are destined to fall against it is up to fate. This was the prophecy that the star demon god made at the cost of his lifespan. The star demon god continued, according to my predictions, among the two who are going to bring a catastrophe upon us, there's naturally him, but I still cannot guess the identity of that sun-like meteor. It's very possibly a human that is going to emerge suddenly. We have to pay further attention to the human's circumstances. That young human that Arbao met in the illusory paradise is very suspicious. If we get the opportunity, we have to kill him at any cost. And according to my predictions, that human is very possibly related to him, and extremely closely. If things are like that, our target is now a lot easier to find. Hearing his words, the demon god emperor was shaken. Him? Can it really be him? Boss, were you thinking of something? The star demon god gave the demon god emperor a surprised look. The demon god emperor shook his head slightly, carrying a pondering look on his face. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.